Troy had a crush on a stage singer named Evie for 5 years. But he never had the courage to confess his feelings to her because he never believed he was worthy of her. From the very first day he saw Evie, he started working extremely hard to make himself worthy of her. And eventually, through relentless effort, he took over his late parents' company and became its CEO. However, just when Troy was finally about to confess his love, he discovered something shocking. Evie had retired from the entertainment industry because she was getting married through an arranged marriage. Before leaving the industry, Evie performed a goodbye song. When Troy heard that song, he couldn't hold back his tears and broke down crying. The video of him crying went viral overnight because Troy was widely known in the business world as a ruthless and cold-hearted CEO. Seeing someone like him cry shocked everyone. Meanwhile, Troy's family had also arranged a marriage for him. This marriage was actually part of a business deal, and Troy had no choice but to go through with it. Still heartbroken over losing his crush, Troy didn't even bother to learn anything about his arranged fiancée. The only thing he had was her phone number. So he called her and said, "Mississippi Lane, I'm in love with another woman, and I always will be. So don't waste your time on me. Our marriage is just a deal. After 1 year, we'll get a divorce. So if there's someone you like or someone you want to spend time with, you're free to do that. I won't interfere in your life." Ivy was extremely surprised to hear this. Then Troy continued, "I heard from your parents that your first love lives in Skirich. I often travel there for business. When I go next time, I can take you with me so you can stay with him. I won't interfere in your matters, and you won't interfere in mine. Our marriage will remain just a deal." To Troy's surprise, Ivy happily agreed because she also didn't want this forced marriage. But then Troy said, "Just in case you change your mind in the future and refuse to divorce, I'm standing downstairs right now with a prenuptial agreement. Come down and sign it so that you won't go back on your word later." When Ivy looked out the window, she was shocked to see that he was actually standing downstairs. Just then, Ivy's parents came into the room and told her to get ready quickly. "Mr. Quincy has come to meet you personally." But Ivy took too long getting ready. Meanwhile, Troy decided to leave and said, "The prenuptial agreement is here. She could just sign it." However, Ivy's father insisted, "She'll be here in a moment. At least have breakfast first." But Troy replied coldly, "We'll have plenty of forced encounters in the future anyway. It's better if we don't meet now." And with that, he left. When Ivy finally saw the prenuptial agreement, her eyes lit up because the document clearly stated that after the divorce, she would receive 1 billion yuan. Since she also didn't want this forced marriage, this condition sounded perfect to her. Later, Troy went to a temple to pray for Evie. But there, he suddenly saw a couple together, which made him think of something. What if Mississippi Lane tries to get clingy with me after the marriage? Immediately, he called Ivy and said, "Mississippi Lane, please add one more supplementary clause to the prenuptial agreement. Even after marriage, there will be no physical contact between us, not even holding hands." Ivy reassured him calmly, "Don't worry, nothing like that will ever happen between us." While driving on the road, Troy suddenly notices an advertisement for a ring. Seeing it reminds him of a promise he once made to himself, that he would have a ring custom-made for Evie. He thinks to himself, "Even if she can never be mine, I will still keep my promise. I will never put a ring on anyone else." Immediately, he calls Ivy Lane again. "Mississippi Lane, add another clause to the agreement. I won't prepare any ring for you, and you don't need to prepare or wear one for me either. There will be no wedding ceremony, and you must never reveal our marriage anywhere. This marriage will remain a secret, and after 1 year it will end. I will always stay loyal to her." Hearing this, Ivy gets annoyed and replies angrily, "Fine, whatever you want, that's how it will be." Then she hangs up the phone. But that night, Troy calls her again. "You're not allowed to come to my house. You won't have any keys or passwords either." Ivy, already irritated, says, "If there's anything else, just say everything at once so I can add it." Troy replies, "For now, just update the agreement." However, the whole night, he keeps bothering Ivy, asking her to add different clauses one after another to the prenuptial contract. Finally, the last clause he adds is, "You are never allowed to fall in love with me." Ivy angrily responds, "Don't worry, I will never fall in love with you. Troy then says, "That's it. Just sign the contract and send it to my house." The next morning, Ivy arrives at Troy's house carrying a bundle of the contract papers. When the housemaids see her, they become extremely excited and start whispering to each other. Isn't she the same doll that Sir Troy keeps in his study? Confused, Ivy asks them, "Where should I put these documents?" They point toward the study room and tell her to leave them there. But when Ivy enters the study, she is completely shocked. The entire room is filled with countless posters of herself. At that moment, she suddenly remembers her biggest online fan, Mr. Q, who always liked and commented on her posts. She took out her phone and looked at his profile picture, and to her surprise, it was taken in this exact same study room. Only now does she realize the truth. Troy is actually her biggest fan. While she is still standing there, Troy suddenly calls her. "I'm waiting in the study room on the second floor." "Where are you?" Ivy replies, "I'm already in the study on the first floor." Troy quickly says, "Just leave the contract there and don't touch anything in the room. If anything gets damaged, I won't spare you." Ivy then asks curiously, "The girl you love, is she that artist?" Troy answers honestly, "Yes. She isn't very popular yet, but after taking over the company this year, I plan to increase her resources and help her grow. But look at fate. She suddenly left the industry and is about to marry someone else. I wonder which lucky guy gets to marry Evie. I hope he treats her well, otherwise I won't let him off." Hearing how important she is to him secretly makes Ivy feel very happy. Then she asks, "Troy, are you sure you don't want to meet me before we get the marriage license?" Troy replies firmly, "I've already made everything clear. Nothing will ever happen between us." Ivy asks again, "Our contract hasn't become active yet. Are you sure you're going to follow everything? Freedom to date, no wedding, mandatory divorce after 1 year." Troy says confidently, "Yes. After we get the marriage license, I'll even take you to meet your first love. You can live with him if you want. I won't interfere." Then he hangs up. The next day, Troy arrives to get the marriage license and calls Ivy. "I'm here. I'm wearing a black suit." Ivy replies calmly, "Don't worry. I'll recognize you." Troy asks, "Then tell me what you're wearing so I can recognize you." But Ivy says, "That won't be necessary. When you see me, you'll recognize me." Just then, Troy suddenly sees his crush, Evie, standing outside. He is completely shocked. In panic, he immediately calls Ivy again. "Mississippi Lane, can we reschedule? I just saw her, and I can't go outside right now." Meanwhile, Ivy becomes suspicious that he might be nearby. When she looks around, she notices Troy's car and starts walking toward it. Troy becomes extremely nervous. She knocks on the car window. When Troy lowers the window, Ivy introduces herself properly. "Hello, my name is Ivy Lane, but you can also call me by my stage name, Evie." At that moment, Troy's mind completely freezes. He becomes so nervous that he accidentally drinks the water meant for washing hands. Ivy quickly reminds him, "That's for washing hands." Embarrassed, he spits it out and drinks the actual clean water. Then Ivy asks, "Should we buy rings for ourselves?" Troy says, "Sure, why not?" He starts to stand up, but Ivy suddenly picks up the contract and shows him a clause clearly written in it. Neither of us is allowed to give or wear a wedding ring. Troy's face immediately turns pale. He nervously asks, "Why are you carrying this pile of junk with you?" Ivy replies calmly, "This isn't junk. You made me write this contract clause by clause." Troy falls silent. Then Ivy says, "You're going to Ski Reach tomorrow, right?" Troy replies, "Yes." Ivy asks, "You'll take me with you too?" Troy nods. Then she reminds him, "You said you would take me to meet my first love, so I could live with him." Now Troy is completely speechless. All he can say is, "Please stop teasing me. Please forget the Troy who said all those things yesterday. He's dead. Focus on the Troy sitting in front of you right now." He even drops to his knees and starts slapping himself. Only after Ivy tells him to stop does he calm down and sit back down. Then she says, "You don't need to waste your time on me. You're free to date whoever you want. After all, our marriage is just a deal, and we'll get divorced after 1 year. You were the one who said all of this." Troy just sits there silently. After saying all this, Ivy stands up to leave. Troy tries to stop her, but but she simply hands him the contract and walks away. Before leaving, she says, "Your memory seems pretty weak. You should read the contract carefully and remember it properly." Meanwhile, Ivy's ex-lover Carl Lucas finds out that Ivy, who used to look like a normal girl, is actually a rich heiress. Realizing this, he starts thinking about winning her back. So he calls Ivy, and she picks up. Carl says, "It's been a long time since we met. Actually, our old classmates are organizing a reunion. Are you coming?" At that moment, Ivy suddenly senses that Troy is standing outside the room listening. So, just to make him jealous, she replies, "Yes, I'll come." Right then, Troy walks into the room and says awkwardly, "About our Skeerage tickets for tomorrow. I accidentally canceled them. Please don't get mad." Ivy looks at him and says sarcastically, "Seems like I might have to rethink marrying you." Panicking, Troy quickly admits, No, I admit it. I canceled them on purpose." Then he even starts crying like a child. Annoyed, Ivy scolds him and kicks him out of the room. Later, Ivy simply books the tickets herself, and the next day, both of them arrive in Skeerage. At the same time, Ivy receives a call from Carl again. Wanted to make Troy jealous, she says loudly, "I'm coming right now. I missed you too." And then she leaves. Seeing this, Troy secretly orders one of his men, "Follow her carefully and report her location to me." Soon Troy receives a report that Ivy is meeting Carl and talking with him. Hearing this makes Troy extremely jealous. He immediately grabs a stick and rushes over to beat Carl up. But when he arrives, he sees from a distance that Ivy is talking to Carl very politely. Seeing this, the stick falls from Troy's hands in disappointment. However, he picks it up again, ready to attack Carl. But before he can do anything, Ivy suddenly slaps Carl hard. The truth is, Carl was never a good man. Earlier, when he didn't know Ivy was rich, he had even cheated on her. But once he found out she was actually a wealthy heiress, he tried to win her back. Carl says to her, "I know this forced marriage is being pushed on you, but if you want, I can still be the third wheel in your life and give you love." But Ivy had already seen through his intentions. Angrily, she beats him up and walks away from there. By the time Troy reaches the spot, Carl is already lying on the ground, badly beaten. Troy angrily asks, "How dare you meet Evie?" Carl smirks and says, "She still loves me. Look, she came running the moment I called her. After all, I'm her first love. She will never love you." This makes Troy furious, and he starts beating Carl up again. The next day, Troy goes to Ivy's house. Her father asks him to sit down and says, "I'll call Ivy." But suddenly he slaps his own forehead and says, "Oh, I forgot. You had said Ivy shouldn't come in front of you. It would be difficult for you to tolerate her. She won't come out. Please forgive me. I forgot about that." Hearing this, Troy becomes completely embarrassed and speechless. When Ivy's father tried to offer Troy a seat, Troy instead made him sit down and said, "You wouldn't believe it, but I used to be a fool." Ivy's parents looked completely confused. Then Troy continued, "I should start calling you Dad, right? But first, Dad, I think you haven't had breakfast yet. Let me go buy breakfast for you." Her parents looked at each other in shock. Troy kept going, "It also looks like the floor hasn't been cleaned. The windows haven't been wiped. And when I checked the laundry room earlier, there were dirty clothes still lying around. The dog hasn't been taken for a walk either. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." After saying that, he rushed off to buy breakfast. Ivy's parents just stand there silently, completely stunned. Soon Troy returned and started cleaning the entire house himself. Watching this, Ivy's parents whispered to each other, "Has Mr. Troy Quincy been possessed or something? A few days ago, he was so cold and strict." Just then, Ivy came downstairs and said, "You don't need to do all this. The house workers will handle it." But Troy replied, "It's okay. I actually enjoyed doing this. Besides, taking care of you and your family is my responsibility." Then he went upstairs to clean the study room, but accidentally slipped on the stairs and fell, which made Ivy laugh. Later, while everyone was having breakfast, Ivy received a call. The team from When Hearts Reset wanted her to appear on their show as a guest. They told her this could be the perfect opportunity for her comeback. But Ivy hesitated. It's an online dating show. That wouldn't be appropriate. So she declined the offer. However, Troy immediately said, "Just because you're married doesn't mean you should give up everything. You should go. At that moment, Ivy's mother asked, "What kind of show is it?" Ivy answered, "It's a dating show." Hearing that, Troy was completely shocked. "A dating show?" Ivy explained. "Yes. Strangers spend time together and sometimes develop feelings." Troy fell silent. Then Ivy asked him, "Will you allow me to go?" After a moment, Troy forced himself to say, "If it's good for your career, you should go, even if it's a dating show." But later, Troy secretly asked his assistant for the guest list of the show. When he saw that Carl Lucas was also participating, Troy immediately said, "Contact the production team and tell them I will join as the third male guest." The assistant was stunned. The CEO of such a huge company joining a small dating show? Soon Ivy arrived at the show. The host introduced her to all the contestants, including Carl Lucas, and announced that the winning couple would receive a multi-millionaire fund from the show's team. Carl immediately started trying to get close to Ivy, even though she kept resisting. But at that moment, Troy suddenly walked in. The moment he entered, he pushed Carl away from Ivy. Seeing such a powerful business tycoon appear on the show shocked all the contestants, including Ivy herself. Ivy asked him, "What are you doing here?" Troy replied, "If you came to a dating show, then I came here for the same reason." Then he grabbed Ivy's luggage and walked away. During the show, Carl kept trying again and again to impress Ivy. But every time, Troy interrupted him and acted almost like a jealous child, pulling Ivy away from Carl. Then the host announced the next task. Each boy would give a gift, and whichever gift a girl chose would determine her partner. The first gift was a limited edition bag. The next gift was a violin, which came from Carl. He chose it because he knew that violin was Ivy's favorite instrument. Then it was Troy's turn. When his gift was revealed, Ivy looked shocked and immediately picked it up. She thought to herself, "This is my first violin, the one I had 5 years ago. Back when I was live streaming, some people threw it into a lake and I lost it." The host then announced, "Mississippi Ivy Lane has chosen Mr. Troy Quincy's gift. That means her partner will be Mr. Troy." Troy stretched out his hand. Ivy took his hand, and the two of them walked away together. After stepping outside, Troy Quincy told Ivy something surprising. 5 years ago, you were doing a live stream. Some people suddenly showed up, snatched your violin, and threw it into the lake. You were so upset that you left immediately. I watched that live stream. When I arrived at the place, you were already gone. But I saw the violin floating in the water, so I jumped into the lake and brought it back." Ivy looked shocked and asked, "Are you crazy? Why would you do something like that?" Troy smiled and replied, "At that moment, I didn't think about anything. I only knew that it was the first violin you bought with your debut bonus. That's why I saved it." Hearing this made Ivy extremely happy. Then Troy suddenly said, "I wish I had come into your life before Carl Lucas. Maybe then you would have fallen in love with me." Ivy replied calmly, "Maybe my father didn't explain it properly. Yes, Carl was my first love, but he cheated on me. I only went to Ski Reach to beat him up, not to reunite with him." Hearing this made Troy incredibly happy. But then he became angry and said, "How dare he cheat on you?" Immediately, Troy made a phone call and gave someone instructions. Soon afterward, news spread on the show that Carl Lucas had slipped in the bathroom and gotten injured, forcing him to leave the show. Ivy immediately realized that this was Troy's doing. Then the host announced, "The most trending couple right now is Ivy Lane and Troy Quincy." However, Ivy noticed that there were many false posts about her circulating on social media. Troy simply made some phone calls, and suddenly all the rumors disappeared. Even several influential people publicly apologized to Ivy for spreading misinformation. That night, Troy arrived with a bouquet of flowers. He congratulated Ivy and said, "Happy 5th anniversary in the music field. 5 years ago today, you made your first debut. Since that day, I've been wishing you every year using the ID Mr. Q. Every year I wish you online, but this year I can finally say it to you face to face." Ivy happily accepted the bouquet. Then Troy suddenly said, "There's been a theft at my place." Ivy asked, "Did someone steal something valuable?" Troy replied, "No, nothing valuable, just our prenuptial agreement." Ivy immediately got angry. "Don't lie to me. You're the one who made it disappear." You forced me to write every single clause in that contract." She ran toward him to hit him, but during the playful chase, they both fell down and ended up very close to each other. Then Ivy asked softly, "I'm just an ordinary girl. Why do you love me so much?" Troy answered, "During the storm of my life, you were the light of hope. The day my parents died, our relatives blamed me for their death and demanded that I hand over the company's shares because they believed I wasn't capable of running the company. I couldn't bear to see my parents' hard work collapse, so I went to the lake, planning to end my life." He paused before continuing. "At that moment, a piece of paper flew toward me. I caught it, and then you appeared in front of me. You took the paper from my hand and noticed the sadness in my eyes. You said, 'You seem very sad. My teacher says music brings comfort. How about I play something for you?' Then you played a beautiful melody on the violin just for me." Troy smiled softly. "In that moment, I completely fell for you. You were the one who gave me the courage to live and move forward. Because of you, I kept working hard until I finally took over the company." The next day was the final task of the show. Each gentleman had to give a rose to a girl. If the girl accepted it, they would officially become a couple. Troy suddenly hesitated. He thought to himself, "If I propose today, people will only know her as Troy Quincy's girlfriend, not as Evie." So he slowly said, "I quit." Ivy immediately turned around angrily, grabbed the flower from his hand, tucked it behind his ear, and raised his hand in the air. Then she said proudly, "Troy is mine." Troy, overjoyed, lifted her into his arms. The host then announced them as the best couple of the show. The next day, Troy arrived at Ivy's house with a bouquet of flowers. He had come to take her to the marriage registration office. The moment Ivy came outside, Troy became so emotional that he started crying with happiness. Ivy comforted him gently. Then the two of them happily went together and received their marriage certificate.